Picture this. It's the Civil War, and the South is in chaos. In the state of Tennessee, white people are split about 50-50. Half of us want to stay here with the nation. The other half want to secede and become our own slaveholding nation. Suddenly, the military comes marching into Nashville and takes the capital, fortifies it, protects it, has a permanent presence there. Free and enslaved black people are rounded up in order to begin building fortifications that will protect the city from any invasion. Suddenly, many enslavers who are in favor of the Confederacy, they begin to get scared and they start running and they leave the enslaved people behind to take care of the plantation and the household. But of course, they're not just going to stay unless they're forced to stay. And so many enslaved people take that opportunity, that chaos, to run away. And where do they run? They run someplace where they can't be re-enslaved. So they run to the military. Why? Because the 1862 Confiscation Act, it basically states that any possessions belonging to Confederate sympathizers can be seized and kept by the military to aid in the war effort. Well, because of our long history with chattel slavery, that includes any enslaved people, because legally they were considered objects. And so, enslaved people took advantage of this law and they ran away. You could even say they stole themselves. And they hid behind Union lines. And here in Nashville, it's the biggest Union line in the South. And so they all ran to Fort Negley and to the other forts that were built to protect the city. And they lived in camps where the military exploited them for use because, we often are taught in very simplistic terms. And so we think like, the North didn't want slavery and the South did. It's not true. It's not true at all. In fact, many people from everywhere benefited from slavery, and there are people who opposed it who are from everywhere as well. Well, the enslaved people worked. They worked hard, and they built the largest inland stone fortification of the nation. And then a lot of them enrolled in the military right afterward. Some were forced, but many wanted to, because they knew that this was their way of being able to finally prove, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that they were equal. They were equal to free people, and they could be free. But this term, contraband, is still so prevalent in the literature. And I think about it a lot because on the one hand, it's a really awful term because it really drills home the idea that people can be objects, that in the eyes of U.S. law, for most of our country's existence, human beings were objects. And that's terrible. But then on the other hand, you had a lot of enslaved people who took pride in that term because they realized that if they were going to be seen as objects, then they would make the most of that. And they would steal themselves, right? They would use this law to their benefit and use it to change the direction of the war and the political direction of a nation. There was even a woman incarcerated at the Tennessee State Penitentiary who, when asked her name, she replied, "I am Susan Contraband." And so she took on the last name of Contraband instead of the last name that her enslaver would have given her. And so I sort of like to think about this word and how people used it and what it meant. Because I think that something that you see when you study Black resistance especially is that Black people used absolutely every infrastructure available to them to achieve freedom, because enslavement is not a natural state. No human being wants to be enslaved. No human being will tolerate being enslaved. And if there is a way out of enslavement, all humans will take that way out. Something I think about a lot now with the way that our labor legislation is working, with the way that many despicable people are introducing the idea of extended child labor, relaxed child labor laws, with the way that we obtain a lot of objects from nations that don't have regulations about who can work and how much they can be paid, places that union bust, right? Like, this is all related. And I want you to think about it too.